Oh. Oh. Oh boy. Oh my God. What you doing? Oh, we're starting our Shakespeare unit in English, and we're gonna be reading a play, and I want to look at it a little bit first. That way, at least I know what I'm doing. Good work ethic. What play? 12th Night. If only I could find it. Well, have you checked the table of contents? Look at this. How am I gonna find that? How am I gonna find that in here? Well, look in the comedy section. The comedy section? Yeah. Shakespeare's plays, along with pretty much every other play in the world, is separated into 3 different genres: comedies, tragedies, and histories. You can find them right here, here, and here. And here's 12th Night. Huh. Well, how do you know 12th Night is a comedy? Basically because of how the play was written and the plot line. Well, how are comedies classified then? Are they really funny? Well, not really. Well, comedies today are basically shows that are just supposed to be really funny. Shakespearean comedies are actually plays that have a light or happy mood. While they may have funny moments, it's not really the focus or center of the play. Every comedy Shakespeare has written is about love. Mostly they're about young lovers who need to overcome some sort of obstacle or difficulty so they can be together. Normally this difficulty is their family. Also, most comedies revolve around mistaken identity. Like in As You Like It, when the protagonist, Rosalind, pretended to be a male known as Ganymede around the man she loves, Orlando. Also, 12th Night has a lot to do with mistaken identity as well, but I'm not going to spoil the ending for you. Also, a comedy often has multiple plots along with the one main plots. Like in A Midsummer Night's Dream, when the main plot is the 4 lovers who are under some kind of spell and are falling in love with the wrong person, that kind of thing. But there's a side plot of the fairies and how Oberon puts a spell on Titania, Queen of the Fairies, and she falls in love with a guy named Bottom who was turned into a donkey. That's a little weird. Well, you need to focus a little more on the situations than the fantasy behind it. Back to comedy. Often Shakespeare would focus on the situations that the characters are in rather than the characters themselves. This way, when the character gets into a tough situation, it can still be considered as laughable. And of course, every comedy has to have a happy ending. This is a given, but it can't be a comedy without a happy ending. And normally, the ending is something like a marriage between protagonists. Here's a list of comedies that Shakespeare wrote in his life. Why isn't Romeo and Juliet on there? Romeo and Juliet is definitely a tragedy. But you said comedies are about romance. Romeo and Juliet is pretty much all about romance, isn't it? It's a little different. In tragedies, the audience is often closer to the protagonist, or protagonists, in the case of Romeo and Juliet, so that way they actually care about the outcome of the protagonist. Which is kind of a reason why when they are in a bad situation, it's not really laughable, it's just sad. Also, the protagonist is normally someone of high stature. It kind of makes the audience care a little bit more. Well, that's not fair. We care about people of low stature, too. I'm not saying that at all. But the downfall of some unknown person with low stature, well, it only affects that one person. Whereas the downfall of, say, a king affects the whole country. Normally the protagonist is admirable, or essentially good, but flawed. This way the audience can relate to them more, and also, the flaw is often what leads the protagonist into their downfall. You know, such as Macbeth and his obsession for power, or Othello and his jealousy. And normally these flaws are related to obsession. Also, these plays are often based on free will. Naturally, the protagonist is capable of both good and evil, and they always have the opportunity to back out, but they never do. The author dictates that they have to just keep heading towards their doom. Their doom? Yes. I'm pretty sure by now you figured out that a tragedy never ends well, and you'd be right. Because a tragedy always ends with the protagonist, or someone who the protagonist knows and cares for, or both, dying. Here's a list of tragedies that Shakespeare wrote. Well, what was the other genre of Shakespeare again? The histories? Yeah, how come I've never heard of them before? Well, I guess nowadays, they're just not as famous. I mean, when you see the faces of drama, you see the face of comedy and the face of tragedy. But you never see a face of history. Well, the face of history would probably look something like this. Now, some people think that just because of the name of the genre, that it would be boring. But actually, they're not. Histories are mostly about the reign of a king who wields great power and then loses it all in defeat and death. Like in Richard III, when Richard III kills everybody in his family so he can get the throne. And then he dies. And just for clarification, all of Shakespeare's histories are about the reigns of English kings. So really, a more accurate term would be English histories. Although, plays that depict an earlier historical figure like Macbeth, Julius Caesar, King Lear, or Antony and Cleopatra, they are classified as tragedies, but they could be histories. Also, none of them are set in England. They're all set in Rome, save for Macbeth, which is set in Scotland. Thanks. You know, this has really helped a lot. Glad I could help. By the way, where did you learn all this?